People what they want. It's Jalen and Jacoby.
He is Jalen Rose.
What up, though?
I'm David Jacoby.
And on the cool check-in.
Together, we are Jalen and Jacoby on ESPN2. What do we do?
We get people what they want.
Well, over the weekend, Yankees fans got what they wanted. Former Yankee Derek Jeter, who is now the CEO and part owner of the Miami Marlins, is facing a lot of criticism over a deal that sent reigning MVP Giancarlo Stanton up to the Bronx in exchange for Starlin Castro and some prospects. The location and the destination of exactly where Jeter traded Giancarlo Stanton has raised a lot of eyebrows, Jalen. Do you think that the criticism that Jeter is facing is fair in this instance?
How about this? It's been since the early 1900s that we've seen two individuals that have hit 50 home runs play on the same baseball team. Okay? That was Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle, who happened to do it for this same 27 title-winning Evil Empire New York Yankee baseball team that Derek Jeter starred with. By the way, there's a list of people that there will be no slander on this program. Derek Jeter's actually on that list.
Oh, he is?
But I have to say this. No question about it. He already got his number retired with the Yankees. They need to retire another number for him after this one. Like, seriously, he looked out for them so much. What did you say Carlos Stanton won this year?
The MVP, Most Valuable Player Award.
So let me get this right. You buy the team, by the way, with a fraction of your own bread.
Yeah, with a tiny little, yeah. He bought a tiny little piece of the team. We all know how that works.
And then you get the squad and say, we really don't have the money, so we're not going to just mortgage our future. We're going to trade the, what did he win again?
The MVP, Most Valuable Player Award.
Okay. And we're not going to just trade him maybe to the Cardinals, storied franchise, or to California where he grew up or has ties. We're going to trade him to the New York Yankees. Oh, man. Dan Levitar said it best. This is Wall Street fraud at its best.
Well, let me say this, I actually am not that mad at this move from Jeter. Giancarlo Stanton was unhappy there, and he had a no-trade clause, so it really sort of limited the destinations where you could actually trade him. They get back a good player in Castro, and they get prospects. And in baseball, like other sports, you have to tear down before you rebuild back up. Take a look at these numbers here. The last two World Series champions. This year's Astros, 2013, they were 51, 111, last in the AL West. Previous champion, the Cubs, in 2012, they were 5th in the NL Central. Isn't this sort of a smart move? And so in 4 years, they'll be set up to win a World Series?
No. And here's the thing. Baseball is unique because unlike football and basketball, there's no salary cap. So you can, by having deeper pockets, put yourself in position consistently to be successful because you can buy all of the best talent. The teams that you just described try to play a Moneyball type philosophy. Build through the draft, have players overachieve, get terrific pitching, find a couple of players here and there off of the scrap heap, and before you know it, now all of a sudden they're in the position to win the World Series. This is the New York Yankee way, having the best players in that market on paper. You can mark them down for at least 2 of the next 5 World Series. I'm telling you right now.
Well, I look forward to that. I also have to discuss this. Tom Savage replaced Deshaun Watson as a quarterback of the Texans. Took this hit, you'll see here, from Elvis Dumervil, landed awkwardly in the end zone, and then there was this reaction, which clearly looked like some sort of involuntary movement of his hands, a very scary scene, made even scarier by the fact that he was evaluated quickly in the concussion protocol and then later returned to the field. He was eventually sidelined for the rest of the game, but based on the reaction that his body had to that violent hit from Dumervil, do you think the Texans should be punished for allowing him to come back in the game, or is this just a complete failure of the concussion protocol?
I got a chance to talk to a friend of the program, Stefania Bell, who's our medical expert, about this. And she brought me behind the curtain about how there are a list of people whose sole job is to make sure the individual that's recognized by the official by possibly being in a where he can't perform or may have a concussion or his bell rung, now needs to go to the sideline. And under that premise, all of these individuals have to sign off before this guy puts on a helmet and goes back on the football field. Just like we saw early in the season with Russell Wilson and in other cases, that process clearly didn't happen properly. And for the NFL, there have been a lot of things non-football related that continue to chip away at the armor as football's being the most popular sport in America. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about Crabtree and Aqib Talib's fight.
Yep.
On the field, but it was premeditated. Then it was the Gronk hit, the WWF style, which I don't understand why he didn't get a 3-game suspension. Now, after this weekend, we're going to be talking about this scenario. It's unfortunate for the league, and we can't absolve the players from this. And I know you hear a lot of people saying you must protect the players from themselves. Yes, I want to play football. You know why? Because it's the game I love. It happens to give me fame. And more importantly, if I perform in football, I can make a lot of money doing it. So based on that, while we must protect the player from themselves, that's why they have all of these other measures in place that have clearly failed as a system.
But over the past, let's say, 5 years, they've sort of established this concussion protocol. And as you mentioned, there are multiple individuals who have to sign on, and him getting back to the field. Clearly, this is a systematic failure of the concussion protocol. I mean, you don't have to be a doctor. You can just be a casual human being to see that he was injured after that hit, to see that he was concussed. He was involuntarily shaking, as I once have done after a really bad concussion. And let me tell you, he should not be able to go back in the game. This whole thing needs to be torn down and rebuilt back up, because we've seen it at least 4 or 5 times this year. It absolutely has to change in the NFL.
But also, Jacoby, it's a mentality that we have as a society, in the media, and as fans. On one breath, you'll say that about Savage. On the other breath, you'll say, man, that Carson Wentz stayed in the game after he tore his ACL. What a tough player, the kind of guy I love to have on my squad. So that's where you create that level of balance that the players have to find a way to tightrope. And we must stop talking about football, and I see so many pundits do this like it's actually life or death. No, it's not. It's not combat. They're not Navy SEALs. They're not police or firemen. They're football players, a sport that was way too violent for me to play. But it's not fatal. I don't see players risking their quote-unquote lives to play football. But now, since we've brought that full circle, everybody needs to work in accordance to make sure you keep the game safe and clearly continue to protect the players.
Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier, Carson Wentz sort of almost was running towards the end zone here in a big game against the Rams, gets hit awkwardly. The touchdown actually didn't count. As you mentioned, he did stay in the game and threw a touchdown pass, but then he was carted off through the tunnel into the locker room, and we now know that Carson Wentz, a potential league MVP, has a torn ACL and is out for the rest of the season. Jalen, does this mean that the Super Bowl dreams of the Philadelphia Eagles are all but lost?
Absolutely. We know they're not winning a Super Bowl with Nick Foles, and it's unfortunate because they have a terrific team all around, the skill positions, the defensive side of the football also. And again, we go back to the NFL. the concussion issue, the opioid issue, now multiple injuries to star players. Quarterbacks like Luck and Watson, J.J. Watt, Odell Beckham Jr., the list goes on and on of notable injuries.
When we come back on Jalen Jacoby, you'll never believe this, but there's a new rumor about a new team that LeBron James might play for next year, and this one makes a lot of sense.
Richard Sherman, Chancellor, Edelman.
I'll drink your bath water, girl. I'll lay down my jacket so you can walk over a puddle.
I'll never do that. That's what I just don't understand. I will open up every door for you. I will pay for every bill. But if we come to a puddle, you want me to take my jacket off and lay it down? And then I have to carry around a wet jacket for the rest of the day? That's just dumb. I would never do that. I would never put down my jacket. What kind of jacket do you think I'm wearing? My jacket's not made of wood. Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby. Chris Paul dealt with an injury early in the season, and he has played the last 9 games for the Houston Rockets. In those 9 games, the Rockets are 9-0. Jalen, let's be honest, both you and I, off and on wax, were a little skeptical about Chris Paul's fit in Houston with the Rockets system. How has this worked so well for them?
You got to give Daryl Morey a lot of credit, the general manager, who continued to steadfast with the system of launching three-point shots, shooting layups, or getting to the free throw line, bringing Mike D'Antoni in town, a coach who made it famous while he was in Phoenix, and then obviously James Harden, who they got from OKC, who's becoming the MVP candidate, along with LeBron James. I think they're going to be in that conversation clearly as 1 and 2. Way too early to have that conversation. But what about Chris Paul? Leaving the Clippers clearly left a hole in what they chose to do because they haven't gotten off to a really good start. They've dealt with a lot of injuries. But I'm not surprised about the regular season production. It's going to be interesting to see when it's 3 minutes to go in a ball game and it's a one-possession game, if one of those guys is going to be in action and if the other guy's going to be spotting up. But I'm happy for CP3 because on paper, he left $200 million on the table for this decision. So I think he has something more in mind than just what's going to happen this year.
You mentioned Mike D'Antoni, and he's not exactly known for his defensive scheming or his focus on defense. And one thing that's really stood out to me about this team, when you have Luka Bamute and Ariza, and you have P.J. Tucker, they have been playing great defense. As a matter of fact, they're top 5 in defensive efficiency on the season. In the last 9 games with Chris Paul, they're number 1 in defensive efficiency. How have they been so good on this end?
It isn't about necessarily making an emphasis. It's about having the personalities of a player and then coaching a philosophy that everybody's comfortable with. And each of the guys you mentioned are willing to play defense. Yes, they're productive on the offensive end, in particular Chris Paul, obviously, with his playmaking and scoring, and Trevor Ariza with his three-point shooting. The reason why Tucker's in the league is because of his toughness. Bamute, the exact same thing, who became a three-point shooter. So when that's the personality of the player, it now becomes something that you can implement on a nightly basis.
Well, Jalen, this certainly won't be the last time we discuss this, and it is, where is LeBron James going to play professional basketball next year? Sam Amick of USA Today did a piece about LeBron James possibly joining this team that we're talking about, the Houston Rockets. They could make the cap space work. They get rid of Ryan Anderson, and, you re-sign Chris Paul, perhaps at a discount. You bring in LeBron. You got LeBron, James Harden, CP3, the other players that we already mentioned. The more I think about this and the more I look at it, the more sense it starts to make. Could LeBron James join the Houston Rockets this offseason?
This isn't earth-shattering news for anybody that hasn't paid attention. The Banana Boat Boys hope to play together one day. So it's for us to now speculate where that's going to be, and each person's going to do that on a daily basis, myself included. All you got to do is follow the fact that LeBron James has how many years left on his contract?
1, and he's going to opt out.
How many years does Chris Paul have on his contract?
0.
What about Carmelo Anthony and Dwayne Wade?
Carmelo Anthony might opt into that big number that's still left in his contract, but he could opt out in theory. And Dwayne Wade is on a veteran minimum, so something tells me that he'll be signing a new deal.
So within the next season and a half, all three of these gentlemen could be free agents. If it was up to them, it's been acknowledged that they would like to play together. Now, where could that truly happen? You just described one of the places, the Houston Rockets. If LeBron James is going to leave Cleveland, it's not going to be to play with Brandon Ingram, who's having a really good season, and Lonzo Ball, who's having a better season, just not up to the expectations of the hype. He might as well stay in Cleveland for that. And if you're going to go to the West, it's going to be to join a super team, because that's what the Golden State Warriors has. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
One thing I could definitely see happening is the Cleveland Cavaliers once again getting to the finals and then once again getting beaten pretty handily by the Warriors. And at that point, I could see him walking back into the locker room and saying, I need to get new players around me. And then there's James Harden and Chris Paul and all the supporting players and a great front office and a coach and a lot of shooters on that roster that could be very attractive for LeBron James. I don't care where he buys a house. He can buy a house everywhere. He's got enough money to buy houses all over the place. So don't talk to me about, oh, he bought a house in LA, so he's coming to LA. Like, no. Where he can buy houses on houses on houses. He can buy a house in every single state. He wants a championship, not a nice commute from the arena to his house. Next, we have this. Someone we haven't spoken about too much. Victor Oladipo. Sing it, Jalen.
Oladipo!
He scored 47 points and added 7 rebounds and 6 assists as the Pacers beat the Nuggets in overtime. You know, I've been focused on Lance Stevenson on this Pacer team, but Oladipo has been turning it up this entire year in Indiana. What has helped make him turn the corner as an NBA player?
He's disappointing me. Now he's becoming so good that he can't just be like one of my under-the-radar guys. Because I remember being on the baseline. Indiana was hosting the Michigan Wolverines. And this guy did a couple of power dunks, including the 360. I was like, he gonna be a player in the league. Then, like so many young players, you get drafted to a squad, but it's not necessarily the best fit in Orlando. You show that you can play in the league, but not necessarily have long-term success there. They move you to OKC, and Russ like, you know what, this is my squad. I got the rock. I'm averaging a triple-double. I need you to do these couple of things. And then they have a chance to get Paul George, and they like, who y'all want? Take him. Sabonis? Take him. Oladipo? Take him. And all of a sudden, he comes home, he gets rejuvenated, he's playing terrific in the Eastern Conference. I'm happy to see the way he's balling, and I think it's going to continue.
Coming up next on Jalen and Jacoby, we're going to answer a very important question. Is it cheating if you have sex with a ghost? Welcome back to Jalen and Jacoby. Jalen Cam Newton did it again. No, I'm not talking about the rushing yards and the passing yards in the big statement win against the Minnesota Vikings. Of course, I'm talking about this ridiculous post-game outfit. Now, as if the sweater wasn't enough, as if the shawl on the jacket wasn't enough, he went ahead and wore what can only be described as like a cowboy hat with no brim or like a fez hat with no tassel. It's an extra reach. Should we give him credit for being original, or is he only original because no one would wear a hat that looks that stupid?
We got to let Cam rock at this point, because he's consistently worn outfits that he knew that other people were going to look at and either love or hate. This is something that he's purposely doing. And shout to fellow Detroit player Devin Funchess, who's become his #1 receiver and balling. Now that Carson Wentz is down, there are two pillars that are happening in the NFC. The team that's won the Super Bowl before, New Orleans, the upstart team in the Rams, and two teams that have been there but come up short with MVPs, the Falcons and the Carolina Panthers. And now you get a Super Bowl winning quarterback returning, potentially in Aaron Rodgers. It's going to be a great race. I would love to see how my Detroit Lions fare as the season progresses.
You're still talking about the Lions? Also, great analysis on the hat. Moving on. Bills fans are a unique bunch. They really enjoy the tailgating outside of the stadium on Sundays. They love to jump through tables, and as we get later into the season, tables are not enough to jump through. Now we've got them jumping through grills. And during the game, in a blizzard, you got these 5 Bills bros in what looks like the front row, shirtless, watching the game in the snow. Jalen, watching the game shirtless in a blizzard, is that cultural?
No question. I remember going to Michigan. It's like Thanksgiving. It's snow on the ground. I looked around, and individuals that look just like the people pictured in Buffalo were wearing shorts and flip-flops. I'm like, I got on the Scully, a hoodie, and a winter coat. And here's the other thing I must stress.
Uh-oh.
When you're watching ice skating or skiing or bungee jumping, shall I go on? Yes, it's cultural.
I understand. Well, we have this now. There are 2 women in the past week have told tales of paranormal passion. One woman said that she had amazing sex with a 19th century ghost, and then another woman has broken up with her fiance because she had multiple partners of the ghost variety, and she felt bad about it. Jalen, is it cheating if you have a significant other, but you also have a sexual encounter with a ghost?
Here's what cheating is. Doing or saying something you would not do or say if your mate was not present. So yes, that is cheating.
Interesting,
because
wrinkle.
you can say that you were having thoughts of a ghost, but you're really having thoughts of someone else, lying and saying it was a ghost. So yes. What do you think?
I think